Welcome to CivilNet. Today we're joined by Tigran Sloyan, the CEO and co-founder of Codesignal. Tigran Sloyan has been dubbed by Forbes magazine one of Armenia's biggest math and coding nerds. So Tigran, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Can you first off tell us a bit about Codesignal? It's a developer assessment platform. Can you explain what that is? And can you introduce Codesignal to our watchers?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Codesignal is we really simulate the job, right? Like think about how traditionally people think about actually interviewing somebody or identifying talent. You start by looking at a resume. But we all know how faulty resumes can be because, all it says is, where did you go to school or where did you work? But what if you didn't have the opportunities, right, to go to school somewhere where has a recognizable brand, or haven't worked at places that has a recognizable brand, but you are highly qualified to actually do the job? But Codesignal, the primary concept is that what if we can create a flight simulator for developers that allows to demonstrate ability, that allows for demonstrated skills, so your resumes, your background doesn't become the thing that's holding you back, but rather you can actually demonstrate your ability and get recognized for it and hired for it.
And where did the idea come from, and how long has Codesignal been running?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is actually deeply rooted in Armenia, because my original co-founder, Aram, and I both grew up in Armenia, and in Armenia, kind of growing up in the early 90s, through the war, through the post-Soviet mess that I'm sure everybody is aware of, our chances of getting anywhere were as slim as anyone's. But both of our parents actually had this theory that if you're, like many Armenian parents, if you're well educated, if you study hard, if you work hard, you will achieve something. So my dad got me into math and math Olympiads at a very young age. Aram's dad got him into programming and programming Olympiads at a very young age. And as you said, as Forbes does it, in the early 2000s, I was #1 in math in the whole country. Aram was #1 in programming in the whole country. And where our paths diverged significantly is someone at one of the international math Olympiads told me about MIT. They were like, hey, I'm going to MIT next year, which is one of the best schools in the whole world. It's in Boston, you should apply. I was like writing on a sticky note, MIT.edu, so I can go apply because I never heard of MIT before. So around 2007, I get a full scholarship to go to MIT from the university, and I move over there. Aram, on the other hand, actually never applies, never finds out, stays in Armenia, goes to Yerevan State University. And as you can imagine, when we both graduate 4 years later, what ends up happening is I'm getting chased by every recruiter in the country and in the world. Everyone from Facebook to Google was lining up at the university to try to recruit me and my classmates. And sure, I learned programming in the school. Sure, I got a CS degree from MIT. Sure, most of my friends did too. But then none of us were ever as good as Aram, right? And when I graduated, a few years later, I ended up working at Google, making a lot of money. And when I reconnected with Aram, who was still in Armenia, I was like, look, the best programmer that I've seen thus far is freelancing on Upwork, because he can't get better job opportunities because everybody looks at his resume and says Yerevan State University. And then they look at my resume and my classmates' resume and they see MIT CS degree. And that really opened up my eyes of how broken the world is, because any CEO you ask, any company you ask, they say talent is the greatest asset we have and finding great people is the #1 priority. Yet it's so backwards, right? Like if they see certain credentials on your resume, it really makes a difference, but they're blind to a true skill.
And the article talks about the relationship between yourself and Aram Shatakhtian. How was the transition? Now you guys are working together as I understand.
Yeah, the company has done really well. And, as we started the company with this mission to actually help democratize opportunity, help create an even playing field, the company has grown a lot. We just announced a Series C funding led by Index Ventures, which puts our valuation at $500 million already. So we've done really well. The company has done really well. And last year, Aram was actually recognized as Forbes 30 under 30. Really, his story especially is amazing because we started the company with this notion of like, how come this guy is actually not getting the recognition he needs? And the company propelled him to a point of really getting that recognition that he deserved, but also helping millions and millions of others gain the recognition, gain that visibility that they need through demonstrating their skills.
And can you tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from and your Armenian roots?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in Armenia. Most of my family is still in Armenia. I grew up in Armenia, and we have an amazing team in Armenia. Actually, the best part about Codesignal right now is our first ever office was in Armenia, and our first engineers were in Armenia. The team, and still right now, one of our largest teams is in Armenia. So it's very deep, it's very core to the company. I moved to the US around 2007 to go to school here. And honestly, the opportunities that you get here, location matters too, right? Less and less, I guess, with COVID. But I wouldn't have gotten the same level of attention and funding if not for the location factor itself. So I moved here in 2007, went to MIT, graduated with 2 degrees in math and computer science, and later on started working at Google. And Google was great, but it was still a big bureaucratic company that I felt like my existence there really didn't matter. And this idea for democratizing opportunity, democratizing access to talent was really pulling my leg ever since I realized how backwards the world is. So around 2015, we co-founded the company, raised our first round of funding, which was 2.5 million seed. And for the last 6 years, that's what I've been up to.
And in the title of the recent Forbes article, it is written, "These Armenian immigrants raised $38 million to reduce bias in hiring with Codesignal." So can you tell us a bit about this achievement and reducing bias in hiring, which you mentioned earlier? Do you think this is a way of the future as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So reducing bias in hiring, right? Like there's so many layers to that to unpack. It's while I've talked a lot about that it starts with the resume, it goes far beyond the resume, because what happens when you actually go to an interview, right? You get face-to-face or on the phone with somebody who, even if they're trying hard, they're still judging you for many, many things that have nothing to do with your ability to perform the job. I don't know if you've heard about this, the orchestra blind auditions experiment, but this is a well-known study that shows that, when you're interviewing violinists for an orchestra, if you put a screen in front of the person who's playing, so the judges cannot actually see the gender, the skin color, the ethnicity of the person who's actually playing the violin, all of a sudden the level of diversity goes high. Like 2%, it's anywhere between 20 to 30% gender diversity increase, because it turns out when you actually see who's playing and you have preconceived notions of who can actually play well and who shouldn't, who can be a great violinist, who shouldn't, your judgment changes, even if you try to really, really control it, right? So this idea that how do you create more blind auditions, if not for violinists, but for programmers and other disciplines, has really deep roots. And that's kind of what we do, right? Starting from the very beginning versus looking at a resume, you look at skill assessment and you understand, how qualified this person is, regardless of where they come from, regardless of their gender, regardless of their ethnicity. Then it goes to later stages of the interview, and we guide and help make this as unbiased and as equal opportunity as possible. And that creates amazing impact for companies as well as individuals whose careers are actually being impacted by this.
And what do you think about the Armenian tech sector? A lot of people have been highlighting this sector as a sector that will bring many opportunities in the future. Others say they're overstated. What do you think?
Well, look, two parts to it. First one is, if we're looking for some sort of phenomenal short-term results, I don't think, building the economy, building a sector, it takes many, many years, right? So I don't anticipate saying like massive short-term impact on it, but the long-term impact, most importantly, is in like, can we build a nation where, I don't know, maybe half of the rising generation are amazing computer programmers? Because look, the programmers, the ones who write code, are the creators of the future. They're going to create everything. Like software is eating the world, which means everything in the world of the future is going to build through software. And if you have a nation of builders of the future, right, that anything they can do, and they can do it for the globe, not just in a landlocked economy, that creates a massive opportunity. You can actually create value that's global. When you create global value, you attract global economies and you create cash flow into your economy from global sources, which is one of the things that has held back Armenia for generations because there wasn't much to export. But software is something that gets exported really, really easily at a massive speed and massive scale. What we need, though, to make true impact is, I think, education, and it has to become cool to be a computer programmer. Let's put it this way, right? I think, and that's why I believe maybe the current prospects of what the short-term impact can be is overstated. But I think every Armenian IT professional, every founder, everyone, including myself, Aram, carries a responsibility to be an example for the future generation, because you cannot be what you cannot see. It's a well-known saying in the US and across the globe. And I honestly believe that. You can talk about this all along. You can be on TV all day and say, IT is the future, got to teach more programmers, we've got to make our kids more math and science heavy. But then the generation, the parents have to see millionaire programmers. They have to see that the ones that did go down that path, that have done extremely well. And as you see that, you will start thinking back of like, okay, we got to send our kids in this direction. This is truly the future. And I do believe we're approaching that point where over the next 5 years in Armenia, from Armenia, kids who were as you said, the nerds of the school will be the richest kids on the block, and that will make an impact in the future thinking of the country and the society.
And finally, can you tell us about any future plans Codesignal may have?
Absolutely. Well, as we kind of started off, we just raised a 50 million Series D round from Index Ventures. And this means we're going to be doing a lot of hiring, and a lot of that hiring is actually centered in Armenia as well. So we have roles in literally every department. And unlike many other companies operating in Armenia, we don't look at it as just local impact. It's very much global, right? Everybody in our Armenia office, in our Yerevan office, has global responsibility and has global decision-making power in the company. So we're really heavily recruiting across the globe and in Armenia specifically. So hiring is my #1 priority. And we plan to triple the company in headcount over the next 12 months. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. And I do believe the opportunity in front of us is much larger than anybody is able to picture, because talent is literally the most precious resource humanity has. And if you can actually measure it, if you can quantify it, sky is the limit.
Well, Tigran, thank you very much for your time. It was very insightful.
Thank you, Leo.
Continue following CivilNet.